Hey Internet, so tonight I would like to talk briefly about a question I got today from someone, a viewer, supporter, who had seen the Is the Church Dying video I did a couple weeks ago. There's also a podcast that I put out so you could get it in two different ways. And he had some questions, and I thought they were very good questions. The way that he described it, it would seem that I did not avail myself very well on at least a couple of points. And so I want to make sure that those are clear as my primary goal here. And make sure I'm not saying something that I don't intend to say, right? So you can go back and listen to that if you like. There's also a previous series in the podcast going back even further on the same topic, wrestling with the accusations leveled against the church that it is dying in the present age. And my answer consistently is no, it's not. It's not dying. It is. Well, there are congregations that are dying. Are they church? That's an important question. Some of them are, some of them are not. There is American civilization, which seems to be transmogrifying. So there's that as well, and that's really impacting what church looks like. But can the Church of Jesus Christ die? No, it cannot, because Jesus is alive. That's just the period. That's the way it is. I will build my church, he says. So from that, there were a couple responses I threw at him in an email. I think it was I hope it was well received. It was his email was really very gentle, very nice. So, but I thought they'd be worth sharing again, just to kind of clarify on some things. So, congregations that are struggling in areas, whether they be city or in the country, that cannot afford a full-time pastor, what options do they have left? And one of the things we had talked about was, the building and the struggle to retain a building, even if you can't retain one, and even if you're too small to do so. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but I gave the impression that there is no way to necessarily serve these congregations. And he pointed out that, there is a place for retired pastors to continue to work, not able to do maybe what would be required in some parishes, but in 20, 30 hours a week, full-time ministry is still full-time, right? And you don't want to diminish that or the work that they're doing in that. So, and I don't. I fully agree with that. I think that right now, currently, retire is kind of a bad word. The retirement plan check receiving pastor is a highly, highly sought after commodity, at least in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, because they can serve in roles where a younger guy with a whole bunch of debt from student loans just can't do, right? And so that is a valuable thing, and we need them. We need them desperately. Yeah. What I want to make sure is also clear, though, is that if the plan long-term for your congregation is to be served by retired pastors, that plan has a half-life on it. Because just like a lot of other things, the demographic situation of the anti-baby boom collapse, which will begin to come, which the church is certainly feeling sooner than Western Civ itself, that collapse of available people to fill those positions will eventually hit the so-called retired pastor bubble as well, right? There are not enough guys to replace them even in their retired service. And when they are no more with us and the Lord takes them, then what's the plan, right? And so that's my question to some extent. I'm asking about now, but I'm not asking about now because I'm so worried about now. I'm worried about 20 years from now, I'm worried about 40 years from now, and I'm concerned that there isn't a plan to get there. And if you say, just wait on the Lord, okay, I agree, but the Lord doesn't say, sit on your hands. Wisdom does not say, a little slumber, a little rest, it'll all be fine tomorrow. That's what the fool says, right? So we should be aware of these things. We should read these trends because the science is there. And then we should start asking, if right now the retired pastor is serving you, and there's 25 of you, and you're not planning for what happens after him or after you all die, well, then what then, right? What then? So I think that's still a viable question. But I do not want to diminish the valuable work that a pastor who does not work 50 hours a week and does not receive a full-time salary does, caring for 20, 30 people or less or more somewhere that needs that, right? That's value. That's the church. Where the word and sacrament are given, that's the church. And that's why it's not dying. Even that's not dying, right? Even should the congregation close, it's not dying. And that's kind of the main point we have to keep in mind. When we confuse the closing of a congregation with the death of the church, we've really lost something about what it means to be the one holy church. So He also believed that I had said, and like, oh, if I did say this, I'm dead wrong. Pastors are not interchangeable. If I said that pastors are interchangeable, I mean, that couldn't be a more obtuse statement, in my opinion. Pastors are so far from interchangeable that it's dangerous the way we, I think, have approached their interchangeability, even currently, in most of the ways we approach calls in the Missouri Synod. And again, we kind of just let go and let God, and we'll have the Spirit decide, well, we don't really have promises it's going to work out like that. So I'm a big fan on trusting promises in Scripture when they're there and not making them up when they're not there. So without going into a lot of detail, pastors are absolutely not interchangeable. And he gave the example, of course, of somebody who comes in and despises the liturgy, doesn't want anything to do with it, and the church loves the liturgy, right? Well, now they're gonna have a lot of trouble together, right? So there's that issue. But aside from that, and I think that's a big aside because that's an important thing. Aside from that, like more than that, or along with that, pastors just don't have the same gifts. They're different people. They're good at different things. Now, I recently talked with a guy who his first call was in a very small town. He was a sole pastor. There were 70 people or so, but he spent a lot of time alone, and he hated it because frankly, he's an extrovert, pretty strong one. He needs people all the time. And now he's in a church where he's working with 2 other pastors, and there's a lot of people around, and it wasn't so much about the size of the church for the sake of his income or anything like that. It was just like he needed the people, right? He needed to have people around, otherwise he was miserable. Right? Whereas some guys would really prefer not to have people around all the time, have a little quiet time, a little spare time. Being a country parson ain't so bad, right? Well, they're not interchangeable, even though they may have the same theology, even though they may have the same, should have the same, honestly, doctrine and general practice. But even in that, there are going to be different levels of what that practice means, right? Does he chant well? Does he chant poorly? And what do you expect of him? What do you need? So absolutely not interchangeable. And congregations, I think, should give a lot more attention in their call process to who they're calling and ask a lot of questions that don't get asked and maybe ignore the questions you're supposed to ask, because most of the questions you're supposed to ask are just useless questions. What do you think about youth? Do you plan to help the youth? Yes. No one says no to that question. Well, maybe there's 5 guys, but people don't say no to that question. The questions you need to ask are, how are your finances? Are you in debt? Do you have trouble keeping money, spending money? How are your kids? Do they come to church? Are they involved in the faith? Is your wife? Does she believe this stuff? I mean, those are important questions. And if you think that it's automatic, it's not, right? So anyway, pastors are not interchangeable, and I'm fully on that. I think that we should spend a lot more time being concerned about first article gifts of pastors and being careful that we're not calling wolves as well, right? Regardless of your church body and all that. So, and did I give the impression that rock and roll has a place in the church? I mean, I hope not. I believe that a genius, like a true, like Bach, could figure out a way to work an amplified electric guitar into Thy Strong Word with the organ, and you'd never know it, except for you'd be like, whoa, that rocked that time. And you wouldn't be like, the guitar rocked, but it was there, and it was what made the organ rock, and you still thought it was liturgical and was just Thy Strong Word the way you like to sing it. Like, someone could do that, but nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing that, right? And so, for the most part, it has no business in the church. Trap set has almost, really no business in the church. And it's not so much so even because it's a trap set. It's not about the instrument. It's about revivalism and what revivalism is. It has no business in the church. Trying to manipulate people with music has no business in the church. Or believing that somehow the church's life or death will stand or fall upon our musical abilities is madness. Is to believe that Christianity is a choice people make, that we're just in a market selling goods. Jesus is a toaster, and you need a good jingle. Like, this is a diminishing of the holy in ways that are beyond expressing. And certainly a very subtle, practical rejection of the real presence of Christ in the sacrament. Are there guys who believe there's real presence of Christ in the sacrament that are doing this kind of stuff? Yes. So I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's a practical rejection of that. It is in what you do, implying that what is there is insufficient. Because you have to add a guitar. Otherwise other people can't believe that God's not capable, right? That idea, whether you like it or not, is what all this stuff's about. Well, I don't believe that. Well, it doesn't matter. You're in a movement that believes that. That's like saying that, you don't believe in gay rights, but or homosexual marriage rights, but you're going to walk down the street in New York during June wearing a rainbow. But I don't really believe it. Well, everybody else is pretty sure you do. Right? So, the rights. The Augsburg Confession talks about, in the freedom to change liturgical rites, it talks about how if the rites become so fused to error that you cannot distinguish them from each other, then you don't have the freedom to pick that rite. Right? You should not imitate the sacrifice of the Mass or the Corpus Christi procession. You shouldn't, if you're the president of the Missouri Synod, you shouldn't walk around in a big white robe with a giant white hat, with a little umbrella over you. Yeah? Why? Because you look like the Pope. That's why. Right? Don't do that. It's wrong. And it means stuff. Right? So revivalism has no place in the church. It really doesn't. It's done nothing but damage to us anyway. All the noise about how much it helps, it has not helped. It's helped a few congregations have a revolving door, in and out, stealing sheep from other churches and leaving them not going to church anywhere. That's the demographic numbers there. So yuck is what I got to say. And I love rock, by the way. I am not an organ music fan just because I don't listen to it in my spare time. So it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with a preference for organ. It has a preference for avoiding movements that by their heterodox definition are mystical and anti-grace. You gotta study Finney. Gotta study Finney a little bit more. So with that, revivalism has no place. Honestly, bad music doesn't have a place in the church either, and we have a lot of that. So while we shouldn't think that the music is what saves people, we shouldn't do bad music on purpose, because people will run away from that sometimes and maybe not have a chance to hear. So they got that tension, right, between election of God doing and our damning. With that said, you can live with bad music. The gospel can work through bad music. It can do it. Yeah. But there's no reason to. It's a rejection of the first article. It's a rejection of the love of creation, which God designed. Right? Kazoo. Bad kazoo music accompanying you, it's hard to sing to. It kind of kills congregational song. Yeah. Organ that's too loud and too slow in a carpeted building. It kills congregational song. That makes people not like the liturgy, not want to pay attention to it. And so even the Christians have trouble learning because we're making it hard on them. It's like, how about you learn to read with both eyes closed, right? Well, it's harder. Yeah? So that kind of thing. Bad music has no place either, but it can be endured in patience. Yeah. Whereas revivalism, it could be endured in patience if you're bringing it to death. But otherwise, different thing. Finding a part-time guy. So this is back on like the helping small congregations. So maybe a guy who could work part-time for like 20,000 K, and then over time, like the church might grow, and he would have more income because there'd be more people. Like, that's awesome. That's great. If that works out, that's great. And there's a guy who you can find to do that, that's great. My point is not that that's not a good idea. My point is that idea is not going to be around very long, and so don't make it your long-term strategy. Because guys who are going to be willing to work part-time for $20,000 with $50,000 to $70,000 in debt and a stay-at-home wife and 7 kids, which is a good percentage of young pastors right now, aren't going to be able to say yes to your $20,000 a year part-time salary. Not if they have to move across country to accept it. So it's just, he's got to kind of know that, right? And if someone can do it, if there's a guy without a call, and it's all he wants to do, and his wife has some income, or they don't care, they'll live in a horsehair shack, like, great, right? But I'm just saying, if you're thinking leadership-wise as a congregation, like, don't bank on that. These guys are human too. And so if it's between you giving them $20,000 for part-time work and someone else giving them $30,000 in benefits for part-time work, and they got 7 kids, at a certain point, they're going to pick their kids because they should, because they're supposed to take care of their family, because if they don't, then they can't possibly take care of you. Yeah? So it's not about greed, but it is about bread, and it is about reality. And that, again, the shortage of available pastors who will be interchangeable enough in dogma and practice to serve you, that's real. And that's my point. I'm not saying I have all the answers on how to deal with it. I'm just saying it's a problem, and we got to be ready for it. It doesn't mean the church is dying, though, right? But it does mean we might have to think differently about some of the ways we approach tactics. Yeah, tactics. So, yeah, and then it would be really cool if, generally speaking, some sort of larger organization connected to congregations were positioned financially and intellectually to come along congregations and really walk them through some of this. To say, look, the income stream is slowing down, the costs are rising. You're going to have to make some decisions here about how to survive with what matters most, with what is necessary, and letting go of the things that are unnecessary. The challenge in my observation is that those organizations which do exist in certain not-to-be-named church bodies that might be able to, you guess it probably, that, well, those organizations haven't been able to do that, so how are they going to help anybody else do that? And I don't mean to be mean. I got no names. This is like everywhere, right? I mean, there's a couple that are maybe doing it all right, but the thinking ahead, they're not doing it. And in my experience as a pastor on the ground, the answer is often, well, we just need to put a new church in the movie theater. Okay, it really doesn't solve the problem, on a whole host of levels. But that it would be great. Like that, isn't that what they should be, right? That they would be able to come along and say, look, here's the thing. Let's do the math together. Let's do it really slowly, and let's see about what the numbers look like for you, what the numbers look like for a human. But the reality is, if you receiving someone, do you care about orthodoxy? Do you care about the sacrament being delivered to you by a not reformed person? So we got to take some steps and make some choices, right? That's hard work. No one wants to do that. No one wants to do that. But it'd be nice to have the powers that be that are there to do that, I think. That's my opinion. You can shoot me if you want. But, yeah, you can shoot me. That'd be right. Go home. Yeah, and then in my experience, again, too many congregations don't mind as long as a warm body is in the pulpit. There is, sadly, a portion of churches, Missouri Synod, non-Missouri Synod, that they sort of just believe that as long as a man or woman is standing up there in front of us and there's a Bible and they make noise for a little while, but not too long, mind you, and not saying anything that really means much because they wouldn't want to change our opinions or certainly confront us, as long as that's there, we're okay. We'll be fine. And if they're happy to do it for $100, great. Come on through, And that mentality is the reason they're dying. I'm convinced of that. Yeah. You will die because you're not church if you don't care what's being preached. That's pretty key. And then the complexity of this. So please don't hear anything that I've said here is like, well, this is the whole answer altogether. No. A dying civilization, which we are in the midst of, again, I think, a dying civilization does not happen because of one cause. I know you want to say Trump. It's all Trump. Okay, sure, fine. Whatever. Yeah, it is. It's all Trump. But aside from him, also with him, under him, right? Because he's like what is he? He's the Voltron of all the other causes, something like that. It's not one cause. Can't be. There's too much. The world is too wide. There are too many things going on for it to be one cause. There is a multiplex series of events that have brought us to this point, both in terms of Western Civ and in terms of Missouri Synod. And so I'm throwing stuff in the air and saying, I think this is part of the picture. I think this is something we need to talk about. I think this is something that isn't working anymore. I think this is true forever because the Bible says so, right? I'm throwing that out there and saying if we're not talking about this, we're in big trouble. So if I've given the impression on this that somehow my solutions to congregational problems are the only ones to be applied across the board, please, I'm sorry, no, they're not, because it's all different in every corner. There are similarities and the things we can learn from each other, and we have some of the same problems. And in general, if it's the same problem, there may be pieces that are the same solutions. And the only way we find that, again, is to throw it in the air and hack at it and fail a little bit, looking for the right solution. Maybe we stumble upon it and share it with each other. Yeah. So, yeah, as it is. I don't remember his name, but if you're watching, I don't know if he only listens or watches, I don't know. But again, I really appreciate the spirit with which that response came. It was not as many comments can be online, which are a little more acerbic. So I really appreciate that, and I hope that my response in the email and here as well is taken in the same vein. Yeah, we're working it out. We're working it out. We're in this together. We're going to stand firm. It's going to be by standing firm, not by dividing, by reconciling in the things we know to be certain, and by hearing each other when we're like, wait, did you say that? And like, oh, yeah, maybe, no, not intentionally, that kind of thing. So hope this helps. This isn't exactly what Wendy Kissick. What? You got to be kidding me. We don't use contemporary. What? Where do you go to church? You don't go to my church, do you? We sing Divine Service 4. It's totally contemporary. It was written like 10 years ago. Yeah. So anyway, just saying. And our psalm tones are fairly recent as well. Anything else? That electronic keyboard. Yeah. Then sometimes we use that. That's really bad. That's just my opinion. But terrible. Not the players. They're great. The pianists are great. The keyboard is a. I mean, are you with me, world? Like, if you're under 40, raise your hand. Like, you would rather have the music be real music, right? Like, it doesn't have to be perfect music, but like real. So it's like Baby Grand versus Casio. Like, not the same game, right? Not even, like, it's like NBA versus junior high kind of thing. Yeah, well, that's my opinion on that. So, anyhow, what I meant to say, largely was good night. And enjoy your 4th of July. I do not intend to log in tomorrow. I did not finish. Look, see that? This is receipts. I had one job today. Well, I had a bunch of jobs today, but one job that I really, really wanted done before the 4th of July, and it was those receipts. It just, yeah. Have a happy 4th of July. Enjoy your freedom to worship in this country while we have it. Stick up for it, and don't be afraid to talk with those you disagree with and have a civil discourse, because that's the way it stays. Yeah, it's the way it stays. Freedom. Rock out.